Shalom Aleichem Rabotai. This is the Mishnah Yomi for the first day of Pesach, for Tu B'Nisan, and it's also Shabbat, so Shabbat Shalom, Chag Sameach, Chag Kasher V'Sameach. We're continuing in the sixth parak of Kilayim, Ezehu Aris. We discussed yesterday about training vines over structures or over fences. Now we're continuing with that theme with a little bit of a wrench thrown in it. So Mishnah Bet in the sixth parak. Aris Shu Yotze Min Madrega. An aris, a lattice or a trained vines over a structure that's coming out of a madrega. Madrega is literally a staircase, but what they did was when they had a hill, they would actually dig sort of steps or levels into it to make it easier to cultivate. So what's going on is this trellis with the grapevines on it is coming out of an upper step, and some of it hangs over the lower step. So we're going to ask about planting on the lower step, which is a lower level. The ground level there is lower down than where the vines actually come out of the ground. Elizabeth Yaakov Omer im omed ba'aretz uvotret kulo. So Elizabeth Yaakov says you could stand on the lower step. It's lower in elevation than where the grapes are planted, and you'd be able to be botzer to harvest all of the grapes. Hareze oser arba omed pasade. So then it does count as a kerem legabe, the lower level, and you can't plant within 4 amos of the vines. Im love, if they're way up high, you can't reach them. Eino osur ele kenegdo. Then it's only osur right under the vines themselves. So what's going on is the vines that are coming out of an upper level, coming out of the ground at an upper level, and then they're being trained onto a trellis, and the trellis is leaning over the lower level, the lower elevation, and you're wondering about planting there. So if you could pick these vines, then they're considered sort of part of that land, and they're like a kerem, and they need 4 amot spacing. But if they're way up high, and it doesn't give an exact shear, but people are almost 3 amot tall, basically 3 amot and change, and they can reach up also another amma. So if it's more than 4 amas off the ground level, and you can't reach these grapes, then it doesn't make it usher except for right underneath the vines themselves. Blazer Omer. Blazer says, achad baratz achad madrega. Says even if you planted one on ground level and one on the next step up, the next elevation up, im gevoa min aretz asar tefachim. If that next elevation up is 10 tefachim off ground level, eina mitzrefet dimah. So these vines don't combine to make a vineyard. Im lav harizim mitzrefet dimah. If it's less than 10 tefachim, if you had one row of grapes on ground level, one row of grapes, one step up the hill that you've carved out into steps, then that would combine. And this reminds us, Rabosei, of the very last Mishnah in Bava Metzia discusses a similar situation where you had an upper level and a lower level, and then there's something growing out of the ground in the middle of to whom that belongs. And it's kedai to see the Ben Yehoyada there who explains it on a mystical level. That's the last Mishnah in Bava Metzia with a similar setup in terms of the farming. Mishnah Gimel, Hamadle et Hagefen al Mixas Apifyarot. Somebody trains his vine over some of a lattice. Lo Yavizera el Tachat Motor. Don't plant seeds under the rest of the lattice, the part of the lattice that doesn't have the vine on it. Im Hevi Lo Kiddush. If you planted some other species under that area that's not underneath the vine, it doesn't make it Kiddush, the bad Kiddush, where it's going to be Asr as Kilayim. Im Hilech Chodosh. And if the vine starts growing from where it is, the sa'ar, we call it, the leaves and the vines and the tendrils, Asr. Now it makes it Asr as Kilayim. Whatever's underneath the aris, underneath this lattice work that has the grape on it, is going to be Asr. And so too is the din if somebody trains his grapevine to go up an ilan strak. Ilan strak is a barren tree. It's not a fruit-bearing tree at all. So he's allowed to train his vine to go up such a tree, but now that tree becomes like the trellis, and planting any other species under the shade of that tree is going to become a problem because now the tree is sort of buttled to the vine, and the vine sort of takes over halachically that tree, and you can't plant other things underneath. Shkayach Rabotai, Chag Kasher V'Sameach.